Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the December 17th Curriculum Committee meeting. I will call the meeting to order. We have full attendance here, and Ms. Helms is on the phone with us. So item 1B, approval of agenda. I'll need a motion. We have one slight change in the agenda. Item 2A, McKinney Vento with support. We will switch with item B, restart schools. So with that, are there any other changes in the agenda? If not, I'll get a motion to approve the amended agenda, please.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Approval of meeting minutes from October 31st. Do we have any changes, amendments to the agenda? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve. Jones makes a motion to approve. Need a second. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's all right. Just want to make sure we get everybody on the record. All right. We're going to go to item 2B, restart schools, and I'll turn this over to Dr. Houlihan to introduce what order we'll go here. Or Dr. Breeden, who wants to take the hand on.
So the state of North Carolina, first of all, good morning, everyone. As you all know, we have several schools that have been historically low performing that have been working throughout the past few years to get out of that status, and many of them have done so successfully. Every year, and I'll say they are structured under what the state governs as restart. They're a restart model, which means that for our sakes, they have flexibility that other schools in the state and other schools in the county do not have, specifically over financial and human resource allocation. So every year, our restart schools are required to submit an annual report to UPI, reviewing the status of their programming in the school and how they're using restart as a structure to improve their school. So we have our principals here today of our 5 restart schools that are here to give you a very high level update on the progress that they've been making and any lessons that we're learning as part of being a restart school. I think we're going to start with our middle schools first, East Junior Middle School, and then go to our elementary school. So if the board won't mind, we'll take each school one at a time and then leave it for questions at the end.
And approve all at the end, or you could.
We'll approve all of you to go to the full board for approval. Dr. Crawford, thank you.
Good morning. So as Dr. Houlihan mentioned, with the restart, it does give us the flexibility of hiring, as well as additional funding. So one of the challenges at East Union, and I know everybody will echo this as well, is that, being a Title I high priority school, that's a challenge in itself to get highly qualified teachers to come to the school. And then secondly, at East Union, getting people to make that drive out to East Union, because when they can pass by several other schools. So those are 2 challenges. So with the restart plan, it has allowed us to be flexible in our hiring. So for example, if we post a position, where we might normally get 2 people that might apply, because we have the flexibility to hire people that have a degree, but maybe the degree is not, math, if we're looking for a math teacher, then that allows us, so if we post a position, we might have, 7 or 8 candidates instead of just the 2 that we would choose from. And so that's kind of how that works. It also helps us with those positions that are hard to fill. Math is one of those positions, and so we've really been able to hire some good teachers that normally we wouldn't have been able to hire. And a result of that is we have been able to, the teachers that we have hired with that flexibility have really made some good gains in So that's just an example of the flexibility that we do have. The teachers do, they do, work on their certification, but it gives us time for them to do that. So also, in addition to the flexibility, it also gives us some funding, some additional funding. So with that funding, we are able to hire 5 additional staff, on our team. And, we look at the needs of our school and decide what we need to be able to determine what positions do we want to hire. So for example, one of our 5 positions is, a BOE, behavior management technician. So, that helps us with the behaviors in our building and supporting teachers, with the challenging behaviors. We've hired 3, additional, teaching positions, outside of the 8 AELs that we are allotted, from the state. So that has been helpful for us. And again, the results of the flexibility, hiring flexibility, as well as the additional funding, has really helped us to make some, improvements, specifically in math. And so, it's been great, and we're very, glad that we have that flexibility.
Other board members have questions for Ms. Helms, or if anyone have any questions, if you'd like to call it? Well, of course I do. This is your first year, ladies and gentlemen. I think you will agree, turnover, you're hiring all these great people, you want to keep them there, so I'm sure that's going to be a focus. Do you happen to know off the top of your head last year's turnover percentage?
I think it was about 12 or 13%.
Okay, so is that, what's your goal for this year? We'll put it that way.
Well, definitely,
Better
we
than
want to see, yes, for sure.
Just to put that in perspective, but 12-13% is basically what we average for the entire school system as well. So
Okay.
that is not an outlier.
Okay, that's good. Do you have any vacant positions right now that you're actively recruiting for?
We do have 2 vacancies right now, but we are, not hiring at this point.
Thank you.
Good morning. Okay, so I would have to concur with Dr. Crawford. We too are allowed those flexibilities in hiring, and we have some of the same struggles being a high-need school. So some of the things that we've been able to do is hire people who are able to engage with students more frequently or even better. So sometimes you don't have someone who has the proper certification, but they're able to establish a rapport because we know that students need to be able to establish a relationship in order to, learn what we need them to learn. So with having those flexibilities, we're able to garner people who have the ability to make the connection and really help our students grow. So we were able to procure 5 additional positions, including 1 AP, 3 teachers, and another class of 5 employees, and they're able to help us with our whole entire plan, which includes running PLCs with Fidelity, training those with those people who are going to training over the summer, running committees and trying to raise up leadership within our building so that we can have our people outside of our building administration having ownership. Because I think that was something that was lacking. So in our plan, we talked about our building culture, and that's one of the things that we need to do to be able to bring that to pass. So, all in is our motto, and this is one of the ways that we're able to do that. We also have the running PBIS with Fidelity, and that's something that we struggled with in the past. So with our committees, we're able to have our teachers paired with our APs in order to have some ownership, because that hasn't happened either. So that's something we're really trying to drive this year. We're 1 point from getting that seen, so we have to consider how we're changing things in order to get this done. So we've been able to decrease some of our discipline. In 2 years, we decreased it by 56%, and that was such a major jump that last year we still were able to decrease it by 11%. And then we were able to decrease our suspensions over 50% in 2 years as well. So the reform plan has actually led us a lot of gains, and we're really proud of that. Being one thing we can say is probably the best performance we've had in years. So we are also utilizing data. We're having instructional rounds with our APs and our coaches. So with this new staff that we're bringing in, oftentimes they need a lot more coaching than maybe somebody who's been in the game or been trained properly. So we have our coaches and we have our flight program, and that actually helps us fortify people who might be strangers to education themselves, give them the support they need, because that's the number one thing that drives people away. So that is something we're trying to utilize and provide the proper support. And the other thing that we're really trying to focus on is providing timely feedback to teachers with these instructional rounds and these informals, so that people can understand how they're performing and how it's impacting students, and getting it, and then be able to reflect and put it into practice. So those are just some of the things that we hope to implement with the reform plan.
Questions from board members?
I like what I'm hearing. I like the connection you get with the students and seeing the real personal relationship that makes it different. We know what's on paper, that's great, but I want to see what happens in the classroom, boots on the ground. That's awesome. Appreciate both of you guys. New energy there. That's good.
And we were hearing from them, and we'll hear from these three also is, the idea that certification matters, licensure matters, but more important to us are the kind of person you are, and the people that you can build relationships with kids and understand their needs and also teach effectively. We can help you with the certification throughout that year that you're with us. And that's a huge benefit for the schools that not a lot of other schools have. Thank you, both.
Just a couple quick questions. Do you have an active PTO at the school? Parental involvement in whether?
So actually, it's a point of pride for us. One of the committees is, they're dedicated to growing and establishing a real parent council. So we had our first spirit night at Dairy Queen last Wednesday. I know that's not, a big deal to many people, but it's
I've been there.
So, that was the first time we've had an event like that at the agency, I think forever. So, we had a lot of parents who wanted to get involved. We had about 20 parents who came to the meeting prior to that event. So that's the biggest turnout we've had in a while. And we're just really trying to reach out to parents to let them know they're supported as much as possible. And the more that we can do that and open the doors, I think that more parents will be able to help us in the long run.
And I can't recall which schools correctly. Was the Monroe Middle involved in the weekend tutoring that we were offering at one point? Do I have that wrong? We're doing some extra tutoring either after school on the weekends, and I can't remember if the middle school was involved or was that Monroe High last year.
I don't think it was the middle schools. I know that we were offering weekend tutoring Saturday tutorials at the high school level. I think that might have been what it was. So, and I know that after school in a lot of our schools, we do after school tutoring as well.
Thank you.
Now we're going to elementary, and we're going to start with Dr. Candace Boatwright at Heights Elementary.
So this is going to get redundant because very similar. By the time it gets to Matt, we're going to be out of things to talk about, Matt. We had a lot of success at Benton Heights last year. Very proud of the accomplishments that we made. And I would say our high leverage moves were, I hired an additional assistant principal, and it wasn't about the number of students at my school, it was about the number of adults in my school and giving them the feedback that they needed to, continuously improve. So, we were able to just give teachers, PLCs, more, attention and specific feedback. And, I think the results were evident with our science and our reading growth and our math growth. Across the board, we improved. And we're proud of our C celebration. The other high leverage move would be, with our EPIC grant, I stole the idea of the master teachers from the EPIC grant, and I hired 2 additional master teachers. And what that allowed me to do was, it's like I have ongoing professional development at my school every day, that I have 4 classrooms that are open, that any of my teachers can go visit, and I have 4 teachers that are coaching other teachers, and, it's just been a good return on investment with them seeing good practices and not having to leave the building to learn how to teach. Well, that would be my high leverage move.
Questions? Um, how close are you to the lighthouse? Gotta ask you.
I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. Maybe another 2 years.
Dr. Boatwright, I'm gonna toot the horn here. She is the first one that exposed me to the Leader in Me program. Back at her previous, station
Mhm.
at Indian Trail, and she has brought that with her to our current, position. And they are transitioning into that in the second year of Leader in Me,
So my second year with them,
third year, yeah.
yeah, they had already started just a little bit before I got there.
Of course, you'll be sending out invitations for leadership.
Absolutely.
You're coming in what, March, April?
We are April after spring break.
Is your turnover for staff, is it around our average or better?
I don't know what my percentage is. I know how many I lost last year. But it wasn't necessarily that many either.
That's a prerogative of the principals, to keep in place. Thank you.
Okay, as a result of our restart plan, Walter Rick Elementary exceeded growth for 2 consecutive years. We were 1 point away from a city. So we are certainly excited about the changes within our school. Our focus has been to maintain proficiency, increase that proficiency level as it relates to reading, math, and science. This past year, we had a 30-point gain as it relates to our 5th grade science. I would say our highest leverage as it relates to our restart plan is the hiring of our assistant principal. Having 2 assistant principals on board certainly makes a difference, as you all mentioned, within our PLC meetings, having that time and opportunity to continue to build relationships with our students and to have a divided focus in terms of narrowing down, focusing on our pre-K through 2nd grade levels, as well as our 3rd through 5th grade. Our second addition, or additional position that we hired was our new beginnings position. Now, as you know that with a lot of disciplinary infractions, it may incur a consequence of in school or out of school suspension. Whereas with our new beginnings program, we hired a K through 6th grade certified teacher who's also certified in EC. So when we're assigning new beginnings as a consequence, that student is getting wraparound supports as it relates to counseling, focusing in on the social and emotional needs of all students. And so if you happen to have a student that is classified as EC and needs those additional supports and goals, that can certainly be met by way of our new beginnings teacher. We have some additional positions that were based on our needs around hiring a bilingual receptionist as well. So our next steps as it relates to our restart plan is to continue to focus on our academics, making sure that the social and emotional needs are met for all of our students. So it certainly is a benefit as we work to close those achievement gaps. Any questions?
Do you have an active PTO?
We are certainly working on our PTO. We do have 5 dedicated parents that have participated in our coffee with the principals and have expressed interest. So we are certainly looking in that direction to get more community and parent involvement.
Great.
Thank you.
I want to commend you particularly on the progress your school has made. 1 point away from the city. If you'll go to these schools, already, they're 1 point away from the city. It's just outstanding. I remember when I started on this board, you come to these kind of meetings and the table would be full. Now, the only reason they're full is because we've got some extra folks here. It's not all full of just principals. So I want to commend you particularly in your school progress.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Matt Lasher, principal of East Elementary. As Dr. Boatwright said, I'm able to echo very similar things that they're doing at their schools. We're very proud that we moved 7 points assistant principal that's able to support behaviors and our teachers, and that is definitely a focus of ours with PLCs. With having some of those hiring flexibilities, we've also been able to we've been able to basically promote some instructional assistants that have been interested in becoming teachers, and we talk about the relationships that they've already built with those students and the parents in the community. So we recognized a couple of those individuals that were able to make that move, and then also with some non-certified teachers that wanted to work on getting their certification and be able to utilize them. Also a couple of similar to Dr. Boatwright's with the master teachers, lead teachers that have some flexibility in their schedule to be able to work in the classroom with students and with teachers, because with having some of those less experienced teachers, they need some more support in the PLCs and with their strategies and academics, that we're able to support those teachers also. Also with the social emotional learning components, we recognize that behaviors sometimes limit our students from being able to access the curriculum. So we definitely have that focus too, and trying to be across the board and just wraparound services to provide those students with those supports that they need, so that they can grow academically. So just overall with those things combined, just again looking to get to that C level as a school, and we think we can do that, and these funds definitely help with that. Thank you. Any questions?
I know your school has been working for several years now to establish some type of parent organization. Can you report some progress on that front?
Yes, sir. We're very excited about that. We have a core group that has established a PTO this year, and they're working hard. We've got multiple events. We've got a movie night. We just had our 60s pizza night, getting the community involved, and excited about that. So, no one's been able to identify when the PTO was last at East, but we've got it established now, and it's thriving.
We got one school that's taking parents to Dairy Queen, and one that's going to Cece's. I'm telling you what, you can't get a parent organization going after that kind of draw. I don't know how you do. Are you finding that your turnover, of course, when you put your own team in place, your turnover is around average or better?
Very similar. I think my understanding is the year before I came, there was a significant amount of turnover. This past summer, we hired 6 new teachers, and kind of like Dr. Boatwright said, not, it wasn't all necessarily bad, but having 6 is, I think, pretty right on par with that. So we feel good about where we're at with that right now.
Great. I want to echo the comment I made earlier. We've had, 3 schools mention that they're 1 point away from the C. Last year, we eliminated any F schools at UCPS. Now we're working on eliminating any D schools. And it sounds like, I know these are resets, it's a different deal. But to show this kind of progress, I'm extremely encouraged and appreciative of all of your efforts.
I agree, and I've said this before very publicly, and I'll say it again, how incredibly proud we all are of not just these 5 principals, but also the teachers and staff in those buildings, and most importantly, the kids. We've got great kids in these schools, and they're working hard every day, and would encourage board members or others to email these principals and go see it for yourself. We have wonderful academic programming happening with Ag Tech and Health Sciences Academy and dual language and Leader in Me, and kind of the list goes on. So I'm very, very proud of you all.
Thank you. We'll let you get back to your schools, get back to your parents now. All right, if our visitors are here, we'll go ahead with the McKinney-Vento support issue on our agenda. Dr. Ridlow, if you'd like to, sure, we'll give them a minute to collect themselves. Okay, come up here and join us, and I'll let you introduce our guest.
Well, last week, I spoke with you, Mr. Sides, and I know that Ms. Sturtman sits on the board of directors with Untitled Chapter as well, and I believe, Mr. Sides, you attended the Pacific play fundraiser. And that started a conversation about, what do we do for students who are, in a family that may be homeless? And so that conversation kind of led to today. And I think it would be good for our community and for our school system to know a little bit more about what happens if a family comes to the community shelter and is identified, not just the community shelter, but what are the resources that we make available to all of our families that maybe fall under McKinney-Vento, which is our homeless laws around homelessness and students. So with us today, I've got several people that I'll introduce. First is Melissa McEwen, who is the Chief Operating Officer over at Homeless Shelter, as well as Jeff Rogers, Real Estate Development at Homeless Shelter. And I've got Lori Spruill, who is our liaison for homeless students, and then our Director of Federal Programs, Dr. Cynthia Hoxton. So with that, I'll turn it over first to Ms. McEwen to talk about the homeless shelter and some of the processes that they follow, and then how they get Union County Public Schools involved.
Yeah, that's better. Thanks so much for having us today. So at the community shelter, we provide really three basic services: emergency shelter, food, and rehousing. So emergency shelter is exactly what it sounds like. It's when families or individuals find themselves without a place to go, a safe place to go. We provide shelter for them, and that includes families. Our food programs are the soup kitchen that serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 3 meals a day, every day of the year. We never close. That is open to anybody in the community. We do not have to meet any eligibility requirements for that. We always just say come hungry. Along our food services line, we have grocery boxes. And those are just for people experiencing any kind of food hardship. Those can be self-referrals or referrals from any other agency. We try to pack those boxes to last for about 2 weeks, but it depends on the way you cook. We have a couple of senior food box programs, some delivery and some pickup. Our rehousing program is really, I think, what for our community has changed the face of homelessness, or changed the outcome of homelessness here in Union County. So a lot of times the people that we're serving are folks who are living at or below the poverty line. And so when you become homeless and you have to save up money for upfront moving costs, if you make minimum wage or, even $10 an hour, coming up with $2,400 to move into a place feels impossible. And for a lot of families, it really is impossible. So our housing programs assist with locating landlords that are willing to work with people who don't have the same backgrounds as everyone else. We connect landlords to potential tenants, and they come to our office and have a meeting, and we do one of our local landlords pointed the character check instead of the credit check. But it's a place where they can talk to each other about expectations and really just start that relationship off on a really good foot. And then, of course, financial assistance. So the upfront moving cost financial assistance. And we do ask every household moving into a place to help with a little bit of that. But we know that the total would be too much. So the upfront moving assistance and then short-term rental assistance. So back in 2011 is when we started our family program. And that was really my baby for a long, long time. So at that time, our shelter was right next door to the Public School Administration building. And I called over one day, and this was years of Jane, you guys remember that? So that's really when this relationship started. So we just talked about what does happen when a child is identified as homeless and what resources there are. So what we've done for a long time now is our case management staff, when we identify a family that has minor children in the school system, we always refer to Lori or to the guidance counselors at the school, really is where that application starts. For us, what we tell parents is, of course, the transportation is hugely helpful. Lunches and breakfast if they don't already get that. But for the way that we see it as the biggest benefit is going to know, and some of the administrators at the school will know. And, you know, kids don't always react to stress the same way that we do. So it could come out in so many ways. So if there is a support system at the school and the child has a behavioral issue based on what's going on at home, it's such a good support system. So, we're really thankful to have that relationship. Another huge way that we partner is really with those grocery boxes. So you guys have an amazing social work staff. Belle Walker and her team are so great, and they make referrals to that grocery box program weekly. And if families can't come and get those grocery boxes, the social worker usually will and will deliver that. So it's been a really great relationship now for a long time.
Thank you. On the side of Union County Public Schools, Dr. Hunt, do you want to talk about some of the processes that we follow and maybe what the laws have us do?
Yes, sure. So the Untitled Homeless Assistance Act is actually part of Title I, and it says that any student that does not have a fixed adequate and permanent nighttime residence is considered homeless. And so Lori is a homeless liaison, and what happens is anytime we get any hint that a student may be homeless, you know, a bus driver says they seem to live in their car, I picked them up at a motel, we train the transportation staff, we train counselors, we train everybody we can for the signs of homelessness. And so anytime we have any slight hint, we get in touch. I get in touch with Lori, the counselor gets in touch with Lori, and we start an investigation basically, like just because you can't go up to a kid and say, are you homeless? So we talk to teachers, we call the family, because we don't want ever a child to be targeted in any way, you know. So once we find out that yes, they are, then that's when we start with resources, the transportation. We make sure that they can have transportation back to their school of origin, the last school in which they attended. We make sure that they have clothes. We make sure that their family has food. We reach out to all the community resources we can because, as you said, the families are under so much stress. We take as much stress off of the family because at the end of the day, it's all about school stability and achievement for the students. So we want to eliminate any barriers to education. And so that's how we support the students and try to get in touch with as many community resources as we can.
Questions?
Sure. I just wanted to commend the transportation department too. So we moved into our new facility in June of this year. Prior to that, families were in local hotels, but now we're on site and we get to see all the things that happen. So bus drivers pick our kiddos up first and drop them off last, so nobody sees where they're going and coming to, and I just think that that's amazing. Yeah, it's so nice. Just dignity, right? Dignity. But the other thing that's so sweet is, I've been outside a couple times when the bus was dropping off, and it was cold, and I heard the bus driver say, "Could you drop it on? I'm not letting you off until you get your jacket on." So just those little touches, and then a parent wasn't there one day, and the bus driver said, "I'm gonna wait until they get here," so they're not just dropping them off on the street. And I just think the kindness and the compassion is to be commended.
You know, I just really didn't really consider how big of a problem it was. It's eye-opening when you look at it, and I can't commend you guys enough with what we've done through school, what you folks are doing. You know, that's the least that a child deserves, is the dignity of being at, the little step taken there. We just have such a big responsibility to provide for all of our students, and I thank you guys so much for what you're doing, and anything that we as the board can do, please reach out to us, because this is a huge, I don't even want to call it a problem. It's a huge situation we need to deal with and fix, and to let these kids know that they are cared about. And I just thank you for it.
Can you tell me how many currently homeless students we have at UCPS? Out loud. The folks that don't have that.
166.
We have 166 students currently at UCPS that are homeless. I want to talk, one of the things, and I want to commend Sir and everyone about your program that I attended. I attended the Broken Hills breakfast. Your rehousing program, I think that's wonderful, because you are right. People, when you think about it, in going to get a place, you're talking about not only first month's rent, but the deposit, and all the utility deposits that are required. It's not easy. So we have a family that's identified as homeless. Let's say they're up at, their home school was Indian Trail area, and now they're in Monroe at the shelter. So we are providing transportation from the shelter back to their home school in Indian Trail. Let's say we rehouse them in Monroe in, I don't know what the time frame might be, a month or so. We rehouse them, or you rehouse them in, say, Monroe. Do we continue to provide transportation back to their home school, and for how long?
Yes, we, want, the day that they are identified as being homeless, they're supported through the remainder of that school year with transportation or any other resources. It doesn't end when they get housing, because we know that's just the first step. So we do support them throughout the rest of that year, and they can actually, we can support them, years after that as well.
Are they, you talked about the school counselors, does that mean they go to the top of the list, if you will, for additional SEL services?
Absolutely. We monitor them, we've got a couple of counselors frequently. Each school has their own school homeless liaison. So there's an identified person at each school that corresponds for and so on any student that's at that school.
Is that an assistant principal, or?
It's not.
You're not a counselor?
Or assistant, most often a counselor, but it can be an assistant principal, yes.
Okay. The transportation side of that's outstanding. And again, I'll echo the other comments. If there's anything else we can do, please let us know. But that's why I wanted to put this on the agenda, because of learning about the services and the coordination that we have here between your two organizations. I wanted the public to understand that we take this challenge of these 166 students very seriously, and their families. And we are here to, it's a free public education for everyone. Just because you don't have a permanent address, it doesn't count you out. So I want to thank you all for your efforts.
I just wanted to close by saying, to both Joe and Lisa and Kathy, thank you for what you do. And it's another phenomenal example of what we call Team UCPS, that working together for the benefit of children and families. And I said to the board earlier, if you have not seen the new community shelter, please go check it out. It's a wonderful space. Particularly my favorite part of it is the family living space. It's very child friendly and welcoming, and our hats are always off. Thank you for your partnership.
Thank you for your support. I've been there 4 months. What amazes me every day, I tell people, if you want to see this great, you can come to the shelter. We're private, we're 45, we come from schools, businesses,
Great. Thank you. And thank you for taking time out of your day to come join us today. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Before we let Dr. Hoxton go, Dr. Hoxton, can you tell us about the books that we will be sending out on December 20th?
Yes, sir. So, every Title I school received last week 2 books per kid, pre-K through 5th grade. That will, each classroom receives, more than enough books for that, so that the teacher also has extra books for her library as well, or his library. And, the students get to select 2 books to correspond with the 2 weeks that they're out of school, because we want them to continue to read over the holiday break. And so that'll be happening this week. They'll be selecting those books to take home. And It's funded, all through Title I funding. So we purchased about, I think it was around 16,000 books, so.
Just wanted to make sure that we're all doing that, holiday break. We are still very, conscious about, making sure our students are keeping up with their reading. And so through the efforts of Dr. Hodges, this is the second time we've done this. We did it last year, and I think it's going to come into the
And real quick, on the pamphlet that by the look, I'm sure there's a Google Doc, it says community resources. That's actually a Google Doc that we created here in the district for our counselors, and it has every resource that they would need to support not only homeless students, but any student in crisis.
Well, that's great to know, because half the challenge is knowing what resources are out there and where to go for what. So I want to thank you for putting it all in one place. All right, we'll move on to item C, 4th and 5th grade pacing guides. Dr. Friedlander, are you going to
Yes.
take care of that?
Yes, and Dr. Healy, I think she just stepped out, but every year, the Department of Public Instruction goes through a standards review, standards changes across various curriculum, elementary, middle, and high school. And so what that does is that creates sort of a process that we come back and we follow. And anytime the state does this, Union County Public Schools is then asked for, we ask for representatives that would want to serve on the state committee that makes those changes to standards so that we have a voice at the table. Also, what that allows us to do is continue to get updates and information on standards changes. And so, once that takes place, we, back in Union County, begin our own process, and we form our own committee and to help bridge the old standards with the new standards. We curate resources for the new standards and update resources for that curriculum, as well as develop pacing guides that allow our teachers to step, once school starts in August, they can step into their classrooms and know that they have updated resources, they have updated pacing guides, and are, prior to that, have some professional development on the new standards so that they are not tasked with developing all of this in a silo, which is, quite frankly, what used to be done 15, 20 years ago. But we no longer do that process. Teachers, it's teamwork across the board. Heading up that process for us is Dr. Healy and her K-12 instructional programs with their ICs. And so what I've asked her to do is just quickly take us through what are some of the resources that we have, what does that look like, that teachers have available to them when anytime the standards are changed. And so what I've done is ask Dr. Healy to kind of pull up on the screen to show us what the standards basically handbook has for specifically for math. I think that was the question that some of our teachers may have had originally, and so I wanted to show the board kind of what we have available. And so we have since then worked with teachers to make sure that they are aware.
Could I give kind of my layperson's interpretation how this came about? Pacing, now correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically what is taught in what order. Now, we've started to use and this is elementary school, what they call NC checking. And there are certain tests that are given along the school year. The first one being in November, then what, January. And what was happening was the pacing was a little bit out of whack with the state pacing. So in other words, a student, and I'm just using this for an example, a student may not have learned this subject matter that the state guide said that you learn it in September, but we weren't getting to it until January. And so when they did the NC check-in, they couldn't, that data for that subject matter was not relevant to them because the kids hadn't learned it yet. So these NC check-ins help the teachers understand what the kids understand and what they don't, and what they need to work on. Am I, okay. So if your pacing doesn't align with what you're going to be tested on, the teacher has a hard time, has to do additional work to understand if the student absorbs the subject matter. And the feedback I had was that was happening on math a little bit. And so you have to, it takes a little bit of juggling on our part to make sure we're coordinated. And like everything the state does, it's a moving target. So you have to kind of develop a system to stay up with things. Is that a pretty fair characterization?
Yes, sir, I think that's, obviously we try and make that alignment almost as perfect as possible. Yet sometimes it may not be question for question, but for the most part, if it's 95 to 98% accurate, we can get very good data from it.
The long and short of it is we're trying to help the teacher be able to evaluate the student's individual skill set in these different areas that are being tested. And that's why it's important that these two things coincide as much as possible. With that, I'll, Dr. Ewing. Welcome.
Good morning, thank you. I apologize, I didn't know that the usual delivery, so we were trying to get the sign up, it's not, anyone who has access to what I'm trying to get to, so that we can, the system has to, try to pull that up for you. But what I do have is our math, this is the elementary one, this is what you'll show you a larger copy of in just a few moments if you can get there. We took all of the standards that are taught in third, fourth, and fifth grade math, and that's where the check-ins are. We took our Union County Public Schools pacing, and we took the district, the state suggested timeline. We did not call it pacing guide, it's just a suggestion. So we compared those two. And what we'll be able to see is in, for all of the standards that are tested in each of the check-ins, we said what we're teaching, and is the standard taught, is it partially taught, or is it not taught? And as you look through our document, you will see that there's only one time in fifth grade when a standard has not been taught. And we started down with principals before school started and decided because of what we believe about the order that math should be taught in, that would be one standard that would not be covered. And we know that ahead of time. It's about two-step equations and using certain operations, and they believe that it was more important to teach the kids in a sequential manner than to jump to that standard to try to teach it just for the purpose of the check-in. So that is the one place that you will see in this alignment. There are times when, you will see partials for the state and yes for us and vice versa, but we know exactly, based on what the state has given us, where we stand and where the state stands, and we actually have things that match them. There are some things that we refer back to third grade, some things we've given teachers additional information. This is found on all of the principals have that, it's on within their resources, our instructional assistants have it, and it's also on our curriculum page, so that any teacher who needs it can see it, and they have shared that in their building, so that helps, guide the teachers as they come in standards with their teaching.
Is it possible on a local level, can you amend the NC check-in to show our own adjustments in the pacing?
No, we just have to be aware. We know that there are a couple places where there's partial match, and then the one place where there's not a match. We just keep that in mind for anyone.
I had the same conversation with a teacher recently, and the way I explained it is every teacher gets a report out from the NC check-in that basically is their summary. You can identify the standard that wasn't necessarily taught. Just remove that from the equation, remove that from your score sheet. You can't adjust the assessment, but you can adjust the score sheet and come up with a different way of progress.
You just don't count those.
Correct.
Basically.
Right.
You know you didn't teach it, just don't worry. Right. Come back to it when it's on. Choose five of them.
How, when does the state come out with their pacing for I assume June, July, they come out for the year?
It remains the same. Once the standards changed last year, this pacing will pretty much remain the same. They did a lot of the work aligned with standards changing, and not a lot of standards. They shifted from one grade up to the next, that sort of thing. They do a lot of that work in that 5-year cycle, so to speak. And so reading is going on right now, we'll be going through the same thing.
So I guess my question is, are we gonna be at the same point for the start of the next school year, that there have been some adjustments in the pacing for one, either reading or math or what have you, and we're gonna have to react or be prepared for that?
We will hold on to this, again, we're not anticipating that for the next year or so, but if it happens, we'll pull our team together and adjust like we did for this one, to help our teachers.
If it's gonna change, you don't, it's kind of a last minute thing, I'm just,
We do,
what do you,
we can be, we're waiting on some information from the state right now that we hope we have before now, and we don't. So we're kind of at their mercy, but as soon as their documents are put out, we get it.
so it's kind of, well, this wouldn't be the first time that we find out at the last minute there's been a change, and we're scrambling around to make the best we can with it.
I think it's much more important that we follow the order that we did as far as teaching the subject, and is to worry about what a mistake the state has made
Right.
on there, and I think that's what we've done, we've adjusted and did it for our needs, so that's important.
Now, if a teacher or a school wanted to play with their own testing model at the beginning of the school year, or to fill in gaps that the NC check-in is not providing, they have the freedom to do that, correct?
Thank you, and we provide some additional assessment resources for them that are set up by standard. So that one particular one in math, for fifth grade, after they have taught that, they can use our district assessment, instead of use one standard 4 questions, very easy to retest at that point, and those are available for school level.
Thank you for updating us on that.
You can say it if you want.
Panorama update?
He has taken up on that. I'll, turn it over to, Mr. McGraw, who is here from Student Support Services, as well as Tracy Strickland, who will talk about both, Panorama and say something
So, and
about Novak.
I'll actually begin. We don't have a social emotional learning board committee, so we have a couple of items that are not necessarily curriculum related, but they do involve students in schools, and we just thought that this is probably the best committee to come to, as closest to it. And so we have a couple of what are actually safety, security, social, emotional items, but not necessarily curriculum, but they are tied to curriculum aspects of our education.
Well, you came to the right place.
I just wanted to let you know that it's not necessarily K-12 curriculum, but it is K-12 student, so.
Thank you, Dr. Houlihan. Good morning, board members. First of all, Dr. Breedlove introduced Dr. Strickland, our Director of Student Support. We also have Don Novak, our School Security Coordinator, with us this morning. If you're okay, I'll start with Say Something. Anonymous reporting system. It is called a system. It's not just an app. You can report things through the internet. You can report things through a phone system too. So as far as the Say Something anonymous reporting system, why did we do this? The state of North Carolina implemented this across the state. They required it through legislation that school systems participate in an anonymous reporting system. It had to meet certain legal obligations, and the Say Something app is what they provided to the school systems. Mr. Novak has done a great job of working with our schools, working with our team members to implement this across all middle and high schools. All of our schools have trained students already. All students were trained by last week at middle and high schools. So they know they can report anonymous tips through the Say Something anonymous reporting system. If a tip is reported, there are 3 teams that may receive those tips. There's a district level team, Dr. Houlihan, myself, Mr. Novak, Tahira, other district central services level team members are on that team, and we would address a life safety tip if it came in. There is school teams at every school. It consists of an administrator at the school. It consists of counselors, mental health therapists, social workers, other student support team members would be notified of a life safety or a non-life safety issue. We also are connected to the Union County 911 Center. Ms. Calcutt, the Director of 911 Communications for Union County, she worked with Mr. Novak in implementing this at the 911 Center. If a life safety tip comes in and law enforcement needs to be dispatched, they can be dispatched through the 911 Center to check on a student or somebody in a crisis. There's three steps really to the anonymous reporting system. A person would submit a tip. At that point, the Say Something Center would process and triage the tip. And then either the school or the police would be notified if it's a life safety or a non-life safety issue. As I said before, there's three ways you can report these. You have an anonymous reporting app. You have the internet where you can enter it in on the internet, and you can call it in if you need to call a tip in. There are two types of tips, life safety and non-life safety tips. So far, the system has worked well. We have had some false tips come in. We did work through that process, but at this time, we've had a successful, probably first 15 tips, Mr. Novak, and we've addressed those. We appreciate law enforcement working with us because it does require them to go out and make visits after we get out of school sometimes. But Ms. Calcutt also at the 911 Center, we appreciate her support too. That is the system in the basic form. We've all been getting tips, and it is a learning process for us all.
Just to go into back up, if you want to read more about this system, this is actually comes out of St. Hook Promise. And there was a story that I tweeted out, I can email it to you just yesterday from NBC Nightly News, a story about this system and about why across the nation more and more states are adopting this as a platform for reporting. Just to support what Mr. McGraw said, like anything else, it's change. And so we're trying to get used to something new. If you'll recall, we actually had our own reporting system and tip line through our own UCPS app. That is not going away. So for our elementary age students and families, we encourage them to continue to use that. But this system is only designed for grades 6 through 12. I can speak as a parent. My two children have come home to say that they have been trained. They've seen the video. They know what to do. And so I want to commend Mr. Novak because he has been our point person. It's one of those deals that while we're glad the state of North Carolina has taken safety so seriously, as have we, there had been no additional funding to allocate to school systems to manage this. And if you can think about it, you know, we get a text, we get an email that always requires actionable, updated information to be provided from our district team and school team. So we're managing this to the best of our ability. Our line doesn't officially roll out until December 23rd. However, once students have been trained, they're going ahead and using it. We have evidence of this actually working. So Don, I want to say thank you to you and for your leadership and management of this, because Don will probably advocate for at least 2 or 3 other Dons to help him with this, but we don't have that, and he's done a great job. So,
Do we know today how many, you mentioned, I think, 15 uses of the website. Do we know how many downloads of the app there have been?
I don't know how many downloads of the app. I don't think we received that information. And I want to say one thing, instead of about 15 tips, we've actually got about 25 today. So that students are using it, but now as far as downloading the app, we've not received that information. We can ask them and see if they receive reports on that. We don't get that at this time, though. So I do want to say one thing too to Hira and her team. Thank you for all you've done. She sent out the message last night. It was great, and I think it really
told parents exactly what this system is about and why we're doing it. So thank you, Tyler. The next item, a separate item, is Panorama Education. You may recall back in September at the Board of Education meeting, Dr. Tracy Strickland and Tracy Carney, our SEL coordinator, presented the strategic plan on social and emotional learning. At that time, we discussed the need for a SEL curriculum, but before we can put an SEL curriculum in place, we need to look at a social emotional learning student survey or screener, as it would be called. Panorama is a system that Dr. Strickland and Tracy Carney have looked at. We talked to Dr. Breedlove and his team about this, and we want to just inform you about Panorama this morning. And the reason why is because we need a screener before we start looking to implement a SEL curriculum. So Dr. Strickland is going to walk through the Panorama Education student survey at this time.
Good morning. So just to give you an overview of what Panorama has available for us, it is a resource by which we can ask specific questions of students. It actually can triangulate to include teacher responses and parent responses in order to ascertain students' strengths and their needs in regard to SEL development. It not only gives us information about the student, but it also disaggregates that information to target groups, classes, grades, schools, so that in determining an SEL curriculum that is tailored for students' needs, we have information to provide that. It also, it being Panorama Education. Panorama Education also, after it identifies student needs, it also has targeted strategies to meet those students' needs, both individually and in groups. The timeline that we're looking at is starting with a number of professional developments to let the adults know how it's going to work and what it's going to do for them, to train staff in different ways that they can develop to meet students' needs for social and emotional health, and also to give us the opportunity to communicate really well with parents. We have designated the spring to be a time where Tracy and Tracy will go out to different schools throughout the county to have kind of a magnet meeting to talk with parents about Panorama, to also, spoiler alert, to also talk about bullying prevention education. But to do that in forums where we can talk with parents about that.
So one of the things that I'd like to ask each side is Dr. Breedlove is at the January curriculum committee meetings to have Tracy come back. We are really interested in developing and implementing beginning next fall a K-12 bullying prevention plan that is tied with social and emotional learning curriculum. And I'd like to ask that this committee hear that plan and as well as the roadmap and the timeline. Part of that is looking at the spring to educate families about both the bullying prevention and Panorama, because they all are tied together. And so we plan during the month of February, dates to be determined, but to have a series of 5 community forums at 5 identified high schools throughout the county, spread out geographically, where families could come and hear a student support update. And these would be 2 primary topics that would be an hour, hour and a half discussion about what are we doing in this system around these 2 areas of focus to really support our kids K-12. So before we do that community showcase, we'd like to come back to this committee and do a further, more detailed presentation specifically about bullying prevention. Are there any questions about Panorama or about kind of why we're doing this and what that timeline might look like?
No, I look forward to a presentation and an overall strategy. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you all. Yeah.
That's a good point, Mr. Irvin said perhaps we could do a abbreviated presentation to the full board for the next meeting after that. If that's possible.
Maybe target that February board meeting before the kind of roadshow goes off to.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Yes, sir. Thank you all.
Okay, now we're back to you. I did.
Can you believe it's already, we are thinking about registration for next year. And with that is our annual program of studies, review of the changes to that program. So Dr. Healy, it's all yours.
All right, so this year we got it right here, what we here, highlighted the major changes that are occurring in the program of studies. The one at the very top is with our social studies curriculum, and this is coming from the state of North Carolina, it's a new legislation. We will continue to do world history like we have done in the past, similar. Our civics and economics class will now become civic literacy. American history has been suggested to move from 2 courses down to 1, so that it's only 1 semester, and then adding the economics and personal finance. So we know that those are the names of the courses. We are waiting on the course descriptions. So in our social studies section of the program of studies that you can see projected, we will just put those in alphabetical order where they belong and remove the previous courses. The second thing is there's, again, new legislation that requires for our students, our seniors who have a GPA between 2.2 and 2.8, to take some remedial courses before they graduate that would allow them to be able to enter a community college without having to pay for those remedial courses. So those 2 will be added. Again, we're working with the state on the course descriptions before we put them into our document. There are lots of changes to CTE, and Mr. Brian Davis has worked on those. Those are coming from the state also, but the 2 most significant ones are that personal finance is being eliminated because of the new social studies class, and that principles of banking and finance will no longer count as a 4th math, and there is a new 4th math put out by the state. So again, those will just go into our list of courses in alphabetical order. CAS, we have updated the guidelines for CAS that falls under our South Providence School. Those changes are coming about because Dr. Tyson has been working with the counselors and the needs of our children are changing. And so we are making our guidelines better fit the needs of our children. So that will also be reflected in the program of studies. It is CDM's season, Credit by Demonstrated Mastery. We're in the middle of that right now. And after having done this for a couple of years, we have figured out that having the students do this in the springtime is not the best time. They are currently in a class getting credit, but you can't, so for example, a Math 1 student who's really good at math and would love to demonstrate their mastery of Math 2 can't do that right now because they're not finished with Math 1. So prerequisites kind of hold students back from being able to attempt to CDM a course, and we feel like giving them that opportunity in the summer would be much more efficient and effective. They will go into the school year knowing the courses that they have gotten credit for so that they can move on with their progression toward graduation. With our non-UCPS courses, we have historically gotten approval for those, prior approval, and put them on a student's transcript with a pass-fail grade rather than the actual number grade. And so that has been our practice, but that has not been the wording in the program of study, so we're going to update that also. We are waiting on some details about our academic scholars. Some of the requirements are changing, and so we know that as soon as that comes out from the state, we will make that adjustment also. We're changing the name of our course classes to alto and soprano, and tenor and bass rather than men's and women's to make them a little more gender neutral, because that is, we have different voices from different students. We are
removing our independent studies from the arts options. They do not align with the requirements for an independent study, and so again, we want to align that with the information that would apply to any content area that would like to do an independent study. We use those to accommodate students who we can't fit it into their schedule appropriately. It's not really just I would like to learn about something and do my own thing. Our themes on the back page are not up to date, so we will be removing those. Another issue that came to our attention is that many of our ESL students also need study skills, and historically that has been reserved for exceptional children. And so we are going to, again, match our practice of a course code that would provide that support for our ESL students as well. It is time to determine the valedictorian and salutatorian criteria. This will be the first year. These current ninth graders, when they get to be seniors, will be eligible for that. And so we put together a committee of principals and have begun to work on that criteria. You see a few things listed that the group agreed on, and one of the items that remains to be finalized is enrollment. In the past, we are starting last year, we just put in that those two honors would be identified, and now we are ready to set that criteria. And the last couple there, PE, we've had some elective courses in PE that students were allowed to take multiple times, and we just want them to know that there are more than one course that they can take multiple times, those who are interested in that, giving them more opportunities. And then you know that we have implemented our UCTA program at early college, and so we've added that under our academies. So
Any
those are our
questions?
highlights. Yeah.
Any questions for Dr. Healy? The new social studies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm torn.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to see shortening the American history.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is so important that our young people have an appreciation for what this country has been through. But I am encouraged by the introduction of an economics and personal finance. Do you have a feel for when the curriculum for that class will be available? I would be very interested in seeing it.
So they are in the process, the state is in the process right now of putting out the surveys to the community at large about what the standards are. It's not the full curriculum, but what the standards are, and you can see that online. They've surveyed teachers, students, parents, community members, all of that is going on right now. That decision was supposed to be made, I believe, in December, and now it's been pushed off to January because there are certainly people who have the exact same concern that we do.
How would a citizen, a parent, go about contributing their 2 cents to this curriculum if they were so inclined?
It is on the DPI website. I would be happy to try to find that for you. I just
Would
get
you
briefs
forward it to
about
me?
it.
I'd like that. There are a couple of things I'd like to see that make sure they're included.
Mhm.
Now this has been some years ago, but having a high school graduate who didn't understand about the banking system
Mhm.
or getting a mortgage or getting a car loan or some of the other daily personal finance items that we take for granted. What's a credit score and how do you keep a good one? That kind of thing. God forbid insurance, like Travis. Some of those things, those skills are critical, and if parents can't or don't teach them, they don't get it at home, I'm encouraged that they will at least be exposed to it here. I'm glad to see that's moving in the right direction.
Some of the typically American history topics that deal with civics, like the branches of government, some of those kinds of things, some of that will be shifted, or some of it's already in civics class, so I think they're trying to kind of move things in opposite directions to cover more of that and leave time for the American history. Okay, I think I can do that.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Please.
Yes, there's no changes to the band. We still have the 4 levels. And we'll, students who choose to do that at any one of those 3 or 4 levels, the schools make that determination.
But no more separate boys and girls chorus.
Well, we have females who, I mean,
You have a deep voice.
have a deeper voice and regardless would be more of a tenor or a bass, and so we just want to give them that opportunity to be able to do that. It matches our practice to mix and match the program in certain circumstances.
This is an action item, so we need a vote to recommend it forward.
Chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion,
And a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Ms. Helms, are you still with us? Okay. With that, are there any other items besides this one to be taken to the full board that we need to vote on?
No, the, information on Restart, that information will be available to the board as part of Restart. While if there is no action needed on the board, we will share that, all of those reports with the board, and then ultimately superintendent's signature and board chair's signature will be held on file. We don't send it to the state or anything like that. They just ask us to share with our board what those Restart, reports look like, and, so for your review. But we've already submitted everything to the state, so we hold a hard copy on file here with both superintendent and board chairs.
Okay. Next meeting date, well, it's gonna be a year before we meet again. January 30th, 2020, is the next proposed meeting date. Any other, questions, items, anything come before the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. And we have a second. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone.